So we're reading a little bit from the Preaching is the Essence, and I think the marker finally bit the dust.
Oh no!
Does anybody know where we were?
I think between what Ramara's doing with it, it's like you can just jump around, and I think at this point, our key is just pick one and go with it, I guess.
Really?
Because he took the marker out, but he's just been jumping around. I think we stopped going in chronological order.
Okay, preaching Krishna consciousness is the highest welfare activity. Preaching Krishna Katha is the greatest missionary activity. Krishna Katha is the only remedy for all people of the world because it can situate one in pure consciousness of the self and liberate one from material bondage. Preach Krishna Katha all over the world, as recommended by Lord Chaitanya, is the greatest missionary activity. And all sensible men and women of the world may join in this great movement. That's from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 3.5.11, from the purport. So basically, when we hear Krishna Katha, our consciousness becomes purified. And the reason we're in the material world is that we identify ourselves with body, and we think that sense enjoyment is the standard of pleasure. And as long as we have these two misconceptions, we have to reside here. And basically, the best we can do is get a mixture of happiness and distress, which comes to an end. That's what that's what the best anyone is doing out there. Some people have a little more happiness and a little less distress, but it all comes to an end. And there's actually unless you come to the spiritual plane, there's no actually eternal benefit. Tideway Swami gave a lecture at our Wednesday program we used to have at 26 Second Avenue. He was saying that if one wants lasting happiness, he has to look for it on the platform that lasts, the spiritual platform. So this Krishna Katha can bring us up to that spiritual platform, because there's no difference between the sound of Krishna and Krishna himself. So we're actually, Krishna glorified the gopis for having attained such a high degree of love for him by his personal association. Because they had his association, they developed such love. But we can also have that association with Krishna, because Krishna is non-different from his narrations, he's non-different from his form, he's non-different from his name. So if we're understanding, if we are appreciating this, we can also have Krishna's personal association and become completely overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love of Krishna, just by that association, by considering that there's no difference between the message of Krishna, or the name of Krishna and Krishna, and the form of Krishna and Krishna. Krishna is personally present there. So that was the main thing that Lord Chaitanya accepted. Ramananda Roy proposed so many things in terms of how to attain perfection, but the first thing that Lord Chaitanya actually accepted was to hear from the self-realized souls. You don't have to change your social position, you just have to hear Krishna Katha from the self-realized souls. And Lord Chaitanya was he was very much against caste consciousness. People think that only the brahmanas can say anything about the spiritual science, but he had followers who were Vaishnavas, who were in the Shudra class, and he would send brahmanas to inquire from them. Like this Ramananda Roy, he was a government servant, so he was considered in the Shudra category, but this Pradyumna Mishra was born in a Brahmana family, and he wanted to hear some Krishna Katha from Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya said, well, you know, who I go to hear Krishna Katha, that's Ramananda Roy. So I think you should. He's such a great speaker of Krishna Katha. Even I hear from him. So you should go and hear him. And so, because the teaching of Lord Chaitanya was, whoever knows the science of Krishna can be guru. It doesn't matter what their social position is. It's nothing. There's nothing external about it. It's just their development of their relationship with Krishna through following the teachings of their guru and getting Krishna's mercy. So anyone who's heard about Krishna from a bona fide disciplic succession and is surrendered to Krishna's representative and has realized Krishna by this process, he can share knowledge of Krishna with others. They can be a Shudra, they can be a Grihastha, they can be a Brahmacharya, Sannyasi, Kshatriya, whatever. So this Krishna Katha has to be out there. So we're distributing the books of Krishna Katha, and we have lectures in our centers, and we invite people to come to the lectures. And because people have to hear, they have to keep hearing. Just like every day people are hearing so much mundane sound. You can't avoid it because our ears are always open for business. You know, you'd have to go around with muffs on your ears to avoid all the mundane sound. So because we're constantly being polluted by hearing this mundane sound, we have to constantly purify ourselves by hearing divine sound. Otherwise, we'll become covered over against our will just by being in this society of mundane sound. You know? Therefore, like between the kirtans, I like to keep the chanting going, because otherwise our ears are just going to hear the mundane sound going by. You know? Yes, sir?
I was just reading yesterday and how Śrīla Prabhupada was saying in his book, one should not consider thinking in Kali Yuga because the mind is agitated easily. One should only think about hearing. One should only hear Krishna Katha, so one is forced to associate with Krishna. It's like that.
Yeah, the hearing purifies our mind. It's recommended hearing. And by hearing and chanting, we'll automatically remember. We remember whatever we hear and chant. So. You had something?
I've brought it up a couple times, but what you read today reminded me of when I was 14 years old. I managed to somehow, through Krishna's arrangement, I found a book about Krishna. It wasn't one of Prabhupada's books. It was still a book about Krishna at the library. I was a really young kid. And I remember hearing the name, just the name Krishna, had a certain effect on me. It was like there was like a certain sweetness to it. And I have a sense that I've kind of lost that taste, having grown up in a world like this. That when I was a lot younger and a lot more innocent, like I hadn't, smoked my first cigarette yet. I hadn't had my first date yet. Like I was so innocent. I was so I was very untouched by the lures of Maya when I was that young. And reading Krishna Katha, even from a not necessarily authorized source, it was still, the taste was, I think it was more powerful and sweeter. Like I still remember exactly what I read and how much it affected me. Then, that of course, also that was by Krishna's arrangement, it was supposed to be just a taste. My mom didn't want a book like that in the house, so she forced me to take it back to the library. She wanted it to be a Christian household, but she wasn't really much of a Christian herself. She just didn't want it in the house. But it stuck with me. To this day, I try to get that same feeling back when I was really young, innocent, and I read about Krishna Katha for the first time. It's like a very distant, it's like a very quiet, muffled echo in the background somewhere, but it's there.
Yeah, well, the more we hear Krishna Katha, the more we become purified, the more we appreciate it. So it's like Krishna's our old friend, and we're being reminded of him through the words of the saints and the words of the scriptures, and it becomes sweeter. And Arjuna expresses he never tires of hearing the glories of Krishna. And Sanjaya also at the end of the Gita, the more I hear about this conversation, the more I remember the wonderful form of Krishna. I rejoice again and again. So sometimes Krishna may give us some special appreciation at some time or another time, but it's always there. Just sometimes it's covered over by circumstances, and the more we practice, the more it becomes uncovered more of the time, until the people on the highest level, they're always aware of the sweetness of Krishna all the time. So, but even if we hear and we're not, even if we don't appreciate just the power of the sound vibration, will purify us. So we'll come to appreciate. That's the analogy of the jaundiced person. So he goes on hearing. So we'll start the verse, text 25. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bejire 1-225. Muneyaha Ata Agre Bhagavantam Adhoksajam Sattvam Vishudam Shemaya Kalpante Ye Anu Tan Iha Bejire Munayo Tagre Bhagavantam Adhoksajam Sattvam Vishudam Shemaya Kalpante Ye Nutaniha Bejire Munayo Tagre Bhagavantam Adhoksajam Sattvam Vishudam Shemaya Kalpante Ye Nutaniha Bejire Munayo Tagre Bhagavantam Adhoksajam Sattvam Vishudam Shemaya Kalpante Ye Nutaniha. Please chant.
Sattvam Vishudam Shemaya Kalpante Ye Nutan Iha Kalpante Ye Nutan Iha Bejire Munayo Tagre Bhagavantam Adhoksajam Sattvam Vishudam Shemaya Kalpante Ye Nutaniha Bejire Munayo Tagre
Bhagavantam Adhoksajam Sattvam Visuddham Keshmaya Kalpante Ye Nutaniha
Bejire Munayo Tagre Bhagavantam Adhoksajam Sattvam Savam Vishudam Keshmaya
Savam Vishudam Keshmaya
Kapante Yunutaniha
Kapante Yunutaniha rendered service unto Munayaha sages Ata thus Agre previously Bhagavatam under the personality of Godhead Adhok Sajam the transcendence Sattvam existence Vishuddham above the three modes of nature Shemaya to derive the ultimate benefit Kalpante deserve Yea those Anu follow Tan those Iha in this material world. Translation. Previously all the sages rendered service under the personality of Godhead due to his existence above the three modes of material nature. They worshipped him to become free from material conditions and thus derive the ultimate benefit. Whoever follows such great authorities is also eligible for liberation from the material world. Please repeat. Previously all the great sages rendered service under the personality of Godhead due to his existence above the three modes of material nature. They worshipped him to become free from material conditions and thus derive the ultimate benefit. Whoever follows such great authorities is also eligible for liberation from the material world. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Śrīla Prabhupada. The purpose of performing religion is neither to profit by material gain nor get simple knowledge of discerning matter from spirit. So I'm going to read a little bit, talk a little bit, and read a little bit, and talk a little bit. Jnanatimurandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshunmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastai Murale Shmite Bhakti Padanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nivase Shrivadi Pastati Harish Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Kalpaturviyascha Kripa Sindhuviyascha Paditanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So right off the bat, Śrīla Prabhupada points out two bad reasons to perform religion, or two mistaken reasons to perform religion. One is to profit by material gain, and the other is just to get knowledge of matter and spirit. So that's something that's so common, even in the Christian tradition. Give us this day our daily bread, right there in the Lord's Prayer, people are praying for bread. And it was interesting to me that when Prabhupada was asked one verse that sums up the whole philosophy, he quoted that verse number 9, which describes that All occupational duties are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. Because he thought it was so widespread everywhere that people are performing a religion for material gain, he wanted to make it a point that this mission is different. We're not trying to get ahead of the material world. And he would use the analogy of people in prison. There may be a first-class prisoner, a second-class prisoner, and a third-class prisoner, and people are struggling to get a better cell in the prison. But that's not as intelligent as desiring to get out of the prison altogether. So because their focus is just on their material body and this material world, that's what they perform religion for. And they don't realize that they're not their body, and no amount of material gain can satisfy the soul. It's a non-material particle, and even just to understand the other class he's mentioning here, the people who try to get knowledge that the soul is different from the body, just understanding that you're not your body, you can't just spend all day thinking, I'm Brahman, I'm Brahman, I'm Brahman. You actually have to do something. And if you don't have Brahman activities, then you just do material activities and you just stay in the material world. So the activities of devotional service are Brahman, they're spiritual activities. And by doing them, one becomes detached from the material world and attached to Krishna, and one acquires the consciousness of the residence of the spiritual world, which is that of servitude toward Krishna, and one gets promoted to the spiritual world by doing the Brahman activities of devotional service. But if you just speculate how you're different from your body, and you don't have engagement in devotional service, you can't enter into the spiritual world. You might be able to detach yourself from this world, but you don't get the qualification to enter into the spiritual world, because you have to have a relationship with the Supreme Spirit of service. That's the Lord Chaitanya taught the constitutional position of the souls. Jiver Swarpoy Krishna Nityadas, we're the eternal servant of Krishna. So just knowing that your spirit isn't good enough, and trying to get a better situation for your body, these things aren't what religion is for. The ultimate aim of religious performance is to release oneself from material bondage and regain the life of freedom in the transcendental world, where the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Person. That's really a theme in Bhagavad Gita, because actually there's many verses that have the last phrase, Tato yati paramgatim, and they attain the spiritual world, or he attains the spiritual world. And who is that? That's somebody who's absorbed in devotional service. So many different places. Krishna's making it clear that there is paramgatim, a supreme abode. And he tells a little bit about it, just it's not illuminated by sun, moon, fire, electricity. Having gone there once, one never comes back to this world. If you go to the higher planets, when your karma runs out, you come back. But it's not like that with the spiritual world. You go to the spiritual world and you stay there. It's not one of the eighth offense is to consider that the chanting of Hare Krishna is a fruit of activity that will get you to heaven. But it's a transcendental activity that will awaken your love for Krishna and send you to the spiritual world. So it's a whole different league. So Krishna promotes very much going to the paramgatim, or his his abode. Dhamma Parama Mama, his supreme abode. Laws of religion, therefore, are directly enacted by the personality of Godhead, and except for the Mahajans, or the authorized agents of the Lord, no one knows the purpose of religion. So, it's not that you can make up a religion. You can't read different scriptures and out of your own imagination concoct what you think religion is. Religion is directly enunciated by Krishna, and what Krishna enunciates as religion is religion. And Prabhupada would compare it to the laws of the state. You can't speculate the laws of the state. They're given by the state, and if you don't follow them, then you get punished. So that's the big problem today, is nobody's aware of the laws of God, because they're not taught. You learn so many things in the schools. You learn the laws of physics, the laws of thermodynamics, but the law of karma you don't learn, and how to transcend the law of karma by unmotivated, uninterrupted service to the Supreme Lord, who is transcendently situated. You don't know that, and therefore Prabhupada created this movement to give people this knowledge, because they don't know about the option of going to the spiritual world. They don't know, and the spiritual world actually is described practically very incompletely in the other traditions. Therefore, there's no attraction. Like in the Bhagavatam, there's many. There's like the chapter 15 of the third canto is like all description of Vaikuntha, and then in the 10th canto, so many descriptions of Goloka Vrindavan, Vrindavan in this world, and also the spiritual Vrindavan, and then there's Bhagavatamrita that talks about the spiritual Vrindavan. There's some idea of what the Lord does in the spiritual world. The most amazing book I think we have is the Nectar of Devotion. It talks about all the different relationships you can have with God, different activities in those relationships, different emotions in those relationships. You can really see the other traditions describe the spiritual world in such a limited way. People just think this world, it has more happening, there's more going on here, it's more exciting. Even though there's birth, death, disease, and old age, there's so many wonderful, amazing material activities you can do here. And they have no real clue of what's going on in the spiritual world. They don't know how God is the supremely attractive person with such amazing personal qualities that people spontaneously want to serve him in great ecstasy in 5 different relationships, and in those relationships they're completely satisfied by the sweetness of the Lord's bodily features, the sweetness of his talking, the sweetness of his reciprocation. And so Krishna is revealing that in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the features of the spiritual world, and attracting, and his Vrindavan pastime is attracting people to want to go there. There are 12 particular agents of the Lord who know the purpose of religion, and all of them render transcendental service unto him. Persons who desire their own good may follow these Mahajans and thus attain the supreme benefit. So that's the whole process, is that there are people who've attained success in the past by acting according to Krishna's directions, and we follow those people. And because Krishna is equal to everybody, as he reciprocated with the
those who surrendered to him in the past, he'll reciprocate with us as we surrender to him in the present. And the more we surrender to Krishna, the more we appreciate the reality of Krishna and the value of surrendering to Krishna. Like, for example, Prabhupada says several places in Bhagavad Gita that the Lord, the devotee doesn't have to worry about how he's going to keep body and soul together. Krishna will see to that, you know. So that's like, that's a big worry for most people. How am I going to survive in this world? But he's saying, but the devotee, he understands that Krishna will take care, you know. And Prabhupada had that realization. That was Prabhupada lived that, you know. Somehow or other he scraped up enough money to print his Bhagavatam. He had enough money to eat, enough money to get to Vrindavan, and between Vrindavan and Delhi, whatever Krishna supplied just enough for him to do whatever he had to do. And the only way he could spread Krishna consciousness all over the world is if he had thousands of followers and millions of dollars. And basically, what did Prabhupada do to acquire thousands of followers, millions of dollars? He chanted Hare Krishna. He spoke Bhagavad Gita, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. He wrote some books, and he went out and told people about the books. And when people came to him, he gave them some advice how they could use their talent in Krishna's service, and this whole movement manifested. But he didn't have like some economic scheme how he was going to. It was completely acting according to Krishna's direction and depending on Krishna for the result. And this amazing result came. And so when Prabhupada talks about that, how the devotee, he doesn't have to worry about keeping body and soul together, Krishna will see to that. That was, Prabhupada was living that life, you know. Without somebody actually living that way, nobody could believe it's possible. But I mean, you can read Prabhupada Lilamrita and see how Krishna was providing and protecting him at every stage. And then people found out in the course of trying to surrender to Śrīla Prabhupada that if they dedicated their life to executing Prabhupada's mission, that Prabhupada would take care of them in different circumstances. And they would get different facilities. Krishna would give them leads on buildings and leads on places to preach, and because of their complete surrender. Yeah.
What is Mahajana? Is that great sage? Is it?
Well, great person. Jana means person. Yeah. And there's a word, Janardhan, which basically comes from Jana. Basically, Krishna's the maintainer of all persons. So Jana also comes up in the Jairada Madhava. We talk about Gopi Jana Balaba and Braja Jana Ranjana, the cowherd people, cowherd ladies, and the Brajavasi is the Braja Jana, the people of Braja. So these are Mahajanas. There's a verse spoken by Yamaraj in the 6th canto where he lists 11 of them and then includes himself and says, we are the 12 Mahajanas. Yeah, and they include Brahma, Shiva, Kapila, Janak, the father of Sita, Sukadeva Goswami, Yamaraj, Bali Maharaj. Anybody remember the other 4? If you memorize the verse, you have them all right there.
Swami Manu, right?
Yeah, Swami Manu. Prahlad Maharaj, right? Yeah. There's just 2 left.
Did you say?
Yamaraj. Did I say?
Vyasadeva?
Is Vyasadeva one of them?
No.
Yeah.
Narada?
Yeah, Narada's one. Yeah, very good.
That's just a guess.
It's a very good guess. Yeah, so these people, they know perfectly religious principles and they exemplify them, like Bali surrendered everything. His guru said, don't surrender everything to Krishna. He'll take, or Vamana, he'll take everything away. And Prabhupada explains that Shukracharya was surviving the donations of Bali Maharaj, and he was worried that if he gave everything to Vishnu, so he wasn't on that level. Shukracharya wasn't on the level of depending on, Krishna for his maintenance. He was thinking, well, if Bali loses all his money, I'm in a jam. So better not surrender to Vishnu. So you can see he's not he's not one of our acharyas, Shukracharya. Although to his Shukracharya's credit, he does speak one verse glorifying the holy name. He says, Mantratas tantratas chidram Desha kalahar vastuta sarvakroti nishchidam anu sankirtanam tava. There may be some discrepancy with the mantras or the tantras or the place, the persons or the circumstances. But if the congregational chanting of your holy name is there, the whole sacrifice becomes complete. So the Vamana asked Shukracharya to analyze the good and bad features of Bali Maharaj's sacrifice, and that was his opinion. So by the association of Bali Maharaj and Vamana Dev, he came to a higher level of Krishna consciousness and spoke that amazing verse glorifying the holy name. I was thinking of telling a story because one of my friends told me that the devotees were taking things out of his locker, and there's a nice leela about how it's not good to take the property of brahmanas. I thought I would tell it just so we become more conscious about that. Is that all right? It's the story of King Nriga. Was that? Do you have your blessings?
How did we go off suddenly this direction?
Well, it was something that was on my mind.
Somebody takes something out of your...
No, it wasn't me. It was a friend. It wasn't. It was a friend of mine. A couple people took stuff out of his thing, and it was disturbing his mind. And actually, to take a devotee's property actually is considered by Krishna to be something that's really bad, and because we think of the devotees as our friends, it's sort of like familiarity breeds contempt. Well, what's the big deal? So at any rate, the story of King Nriga is an amazing story. It is Krishna Kathas, and it's Krishna arranges his pastime to teach the story, teach this message. So what happens is the sons of Krishna come upon this well, and there's a lizard in the bottom, and they can't get it out. So they come back to the palace in Dwarka, and they explain the situation. And because Krishna is compassionate, he comes to the well, and he stretches his arm, which is not a material arm, but a spiritual arm, way, way, way down, many feet into the well, and gets this lizard. And this lizard miraculously transformed into an effulgent being and of demigod proportions. And Krishna inquires from him, how did you get in this state? You're a great demigod, but you were just a lizard. What happened? And although Prabhupada says, of course Krishna knows everything, but still he inquired, because he wanted this King Nriga to tell his story. And King Nriga starts out by saying, well, Lord, of course you know everything, but since you're asking, I'll tell you my story. So this King Nriga, he was so expert in giving charity. He would give tons of charity to all the brahmanas. And not only that, he would dig wells and all the big pious acts that are recommended in the Vedas, he would do. And he was so pious. But he made one mistake. Right? What he did was he gave some cows in charity to a brahmana, And then one of those cows wandered back into his cows, and he gave that cow in charity to another brahmana. So basically he gave the same cow to two brahmanas. So the brahmanas had a big argument about the cow, each claiming the cow was theirs. And so he didn't want to offend the brahmanas because he knew that it's not good to offend brahmanas. So he offered them each 10,000 cows in exchange for the one cow that was contested. And they weren't really interested in all the cows. They were interested in religious principles being followed, and this guy blew it. So they weren't about ready to accept 10,000 cows in exchange for the one. The fact is that he gave the cow to this brahmana, and then he took it back and gave it to another brahmana, and that was like completely irreligious. And so at any rate, Yamaraj, his death came in due course, and Yamaraj was going to sentence him, and he said, "You have like many, many, many pious acts and just one impious act. Which do you want first?" And he thought, well, if I take the impious one, then I can enjoy the pious ones without worrying about in the future I'll have this impious one to suffer. So he took and therefore he became this lizard. And so at the end of the Leela, actually, where did I put it on my phone? At the end of the Leela, Krishna tells about how important it is to not take the property of the brahmana. Now, of course, we're trying to be Vaishnavas, but the brahmana is sort of, the Vaishnava is actually a higher position. A brahmana may know Brahman, he may know Paramatma, but he doesn't necessarily know Bhagavan. But a Vaishnava, he knows all three. He knows Krishna as Brahman, Krishna as Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. So Vaishnava it may be bad to take a Brahmana stuff, but it's worse to take a Vaishnava stuff. So at this time, after Nriga told his story, this time Lord Krishna was present among his relatives who were members of the Kshatriya class to teach them through the exemplary character of King Nriga. He said, "Even though a Kshatriya king may be as powerful as fire, it is not possible for him to usurp the property of a Brahmana and utilize it for his own purpose. If this is so, how can ordinary kings who falsely think themselves the most powerful beings within the material world usurp a Brahmana's property? I do not think that taking poison is as dangerous as taking a Brahmana's property. For ordinary poison there is treatment. One can be relieved from its effects, but if one drinks the poison of taking a Brahmana's property, there is no remedy for the mistake. The perfect example is King Nriga. He was very powerful and very pious, but due to the small mistake of unknowingly usurping a Brahmana's cow, he was condemned to the abominable life of a lizard. Ordinary poison affects only those who drink it, and ordinary fire can be extinguished simply by pouring water on it. But the irony fire ignited by the spiritual potency of a Brahmana who is dissatisfied can burn to ashes the whole family of a person who provokes such a Brahmana. Even if someone touches a Brahmana's property, his family is ruined for 3 generations. However, if a Brahmana's property is forcibly taken away, the taker's family for 10 generations before him and 10 generations after him will be subject to ruination. Lord Krishna continued, if some foolish king who is puffed up by his wealth, prestige, and property wants to usurp a Brahmana's property, he should be understood to be clearing his path to hell. He does not know how much he has to suffer for such an unwise act. A person who takes away a Brahmana's property, whether it was originally given by him or by someone else,
is condemned to live for at least 60,000 years as a miserable insect in stool. So the amazing thing is that Krishna is saying this, our beloved Krishna who takes care of the cows in Vrindavan and dances with the gopis and teases his mom with stealing the butter. So Krishna is very serious. I therefore instruct you, all my boys and relatives present here, do not even by mistake take the possession of a brahmana and thereby pollute your whole family. If someone even wishes to possess such property, let alone attempts to take it away by force, the duration of his life will be reduced. He will be defeated by his enemies, and after being bereft of his royal position, when he gives up his body, he will become a serpent, giving trouble to all living entities. My dear boys and relatives, I therefore advise you that even if a brahmana becomes angry with you and calls you by ill names or curses you, you should still not retaliate. On the contrary, you should smile, tolerate him, and offer your respects to the brahmana. You know very well that even I myself offer my obeisances to the brahmanas with great respect 3 times daily. You should therefore follow my instruction and example. I shall not forgive anyone who does not follow them, and I shall punish him. You should learn from the example of King Nriga that even if someone unknowingly usurps the property of a brahmana, he is put into a miserable condition of life. Thus Lord Krishna, who is always engaged in purifying the conditioned living entities, gave instruction not only to his family members and the inhabitants of Dwarka, but to all the members of human society. After this, the Lord entered his palace. So that's some Krishna Katha about how we should respect the property that Krishna has given to his devotees and the brahmanas. And so if we need to use somebody's property and they're a devotee, we should ask them, is it all right if I use this? We shouldn't just think, yes. Because Krishna doesn't like people to even like taking other people's stuff isn't something that's done by the members of the 4 ashrams. It's below the ashram system. It's not a human activity to take people's stuff. The human thing to do is ask. Like I do the book table, and we have these sweets on the table, and some people, they come and grab them and run, and other people say, can I have a sweet? And we say, sure. And so the people who grab them and run, and some people grab a big handful, that's not human behavior. That's the way dogs behave. So it's although it may seem just like a regular mundane moral instruction, it's something that it's serious, and especially when we're talking about the property of somebody who's dedicated their life to the service of Śrīla Prabhupada, which is very rare. Any questions or comments?
It's also this in the first verse of Sri Isha.
Oh yeah, to take more than your quota. Yeah. And the next verse says that one could go on living for hundreds of years if he continuously goes on working in that way, not taking more than one's God-given quota. And it says that if you don't take more than your quota, you don't become entangled in karma. But if you take more than your quota, then you become entangled in karma. But if you don't, you don't become entangled in karma, and you can live for. And that verse I used to try to sell the book, and I talk about how we could all live in peace, right, if people follow this principle, because basically the wars are going on because people are claiming proprietorship over something that God gave somebody else. And they're saying, God made a mistake, they gave it to him, they should have given it to me, I'm going to make up for it by force. So
Yes.
Yes. From your own personal experience, and if you have any scriptures also to recommend, how do you see practicing vairagya in devotional service? How do you do that? How do you practice dispassion when you're dealing with service?
Well, what do you mean exactly by vairagya? I mean, of course, there's basically there's one place where Prabhupada says, I wish I could remember where, that real renunciation comes when one perceives that something is an impediment to their devotional service, and therefore they voluntarily give it up, rather than, by forcing themselves to give it up in some artificial way. In the course, like for example, some people realize that if they eat too much at night, they can't get up for Mangalarti, so they eat less. So the idea is we're supposed to accept things favorable for devotional service and reject things unfavorable. So we have to be alert to how the different things we're doing. Like if we associate with certain people and then we don't feel like studying Prabhupada's books, then we should renounce their association. Or if we associate with other people and we're more enthusiastic to chant our japa, then we should associate. So basically, we renounce things that are impediments in devotional service. So if we see that some situation is making it more difficult to follow the 4 rules, to chant my 16 rounds, to do my practical service, then we may have to give up something like that. Is that related to your question?
It's related. I've been reading a lot of like chapter 13 and 8 and 9 lately in Bhagavad Gita. It seems like the point of dispassion or detachment, vairagya, is good and bad things, not just bad things that you have detachment from. You have detachment from good things too.
Right.
So even something that's beneficially, spiritually, you should have no attachment to it. That's what I keep reading. Not just bad things, not just impediments, but actual, even things that are helpful.
Well,
that's what I'm trying to understand.
that you see, things are beyond our control, right? So there may be something that's favorable, and we can't always have it. So we can't be upset that we can't always have the favorable thing we want all the time, because it's a false ego to think I'm the controller, and to try to demand that to think I can only perform devotional service in this ideal setting, and if I don't have this ideal setting, I can't perform devotional service. So in that sense, we have to be detached from attachment to an ideal setting, because we may not have an ideal setting, and it's basically the 15th verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Yam hi vyat yatayan te purusham purusharshapa sambidukasam diram soma tatvaya kalpate. Talks about how the one who's not disturbed by happiness and distress, but whose intelligence is steady in both, is certainly eligible for liberation. So that's the state that's trying to be attained, and basically it's attained by having such a commitment to one's service that the dualities are insignificant compared to doing the service nicely. So when one puts all his concentration into doing the service nicely, and thus the situation around him doesn't disturb him because of his complete focus on his devotional service, and therefore he's renouncing the happiness and distress. And basically, Krishna says that person is the person most dear to me. If you look at all the last verses of the 12th chapter from 13 on to the end. He's not disturbed by happiness, distress, heat, cold, honor, dishonor. And over the same things. Why is he not disturbed? Because he's so absorbed in doing his devotional service that he has such a desire to please Krishna, he has such attachment to Krishna, that these external things are small time for him. So basically, in bhakti, we try to increase our attachment to Krishna, and then we become detached from Maya. So that's the strategy, is to try to increase our attachment, and then the vairagya is there. That Ramroy was mentioning that in a class, that we don't have to worry about renunciation, because by increasing our devotional service, the renunciation will automatically come. That's that verse, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayodita Janyasu Bhayogam Jnanam Yadachara Haitukam, that causes knowledge and detachment of foul devotional service. So we have to end, that's 127. We have to end now because we have to get ready to do our other duties. So thank you for your kind attention. Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Śrīla Prabhupada ki.